He rescued a giant Apache woman from the river. Next day, her father came with an unexpected reward. Ethan Blackwood squinted at the darkening sky as thunder rolled across the valley. Spring rains had swelled the Gila River beyond its banks, washing away sections of his fence line. Another repair job in an endless string of them, keeping his small patch of Arizona territory from falling apart completely. The first heavy drops pelted his hat as he hammered the last post into place. His horse, Sergeant, snorted nervously when thunder cracked overhead, sounding too much like the artillery that had once haunted them both in Tennessee. "Easy there," Ethan murmured, the words feeling strange in his throat. Most days he spoke less than a dozen words, and half of those to Sergeant. The rest of his conversations happened in his head, arguing with ghosts. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the path back to his cabin. Time to get home before the weather worsened. Ethan gathered his tools, mounted Sergeant, and nudged him toward the cabin visible through the cottonwoods. 3 years he'd been here now. 3 years of isolation broken only by monthly supply runs into town, where folks called him that haunted Union man when they thought he couldn't hear. They weren't wrong. As he approached the bridge, spanning a narrow section of the river, Sergeant balked. Ethan leaned forward, squinting against the rain. The bridge supports were trembling under the force of the current. "We'll chance it," he decided, having little choice with the storm intensifying. Halfway across, a sound cut through the storm, not thunder, but something else. A cry. Human. Ethan reined in, listening. There it came again, downstream. His eyes searched the churning water and caught movement. An arm, then a head, breaking the surface before being dragged under again. A fallen tree had created a temporary dam of debris. Trapped against it was a figure clinging to a branch, dark hair plastered against copper skin, an Apache woman. Ethan hesitated. Getting involved with Apache business was asking for trouble from both sides. The Chiricahua were uneasy neighbors at best, and the town already viewed him with suspicion. The woman's head disappeared beneath the water again. "Damn it all," he muttered, turning Sergeant toward the bank. He worked quickly, uncoiling his rope and securing it to a sturdy trunk. The other end he fastened around his waist. The woman had resurfaced, but her movements were growing weaker. Ethan waded into the freezing current, feeling it tug at his legs like hungry hands. When it reached his chest, he pushed off, letting the current carry him toward the snag. The woman's eyes widened as he approached. Fear or hope, he couldn't tell. He caught the same branch she clung to, noticing her leg twisted at an unnatural angle. "Hold on to me," he shouted over the roar. She didn't understand his words, but when he reached for her, she grasped his shoulders with surprising strength. Back at the cabin, Ethan laid the unconscious woman on his bed. Her leg needed setting. As he gathered supplies, he paused, staring at the stranger bringing chaos into his carefully constructed solitude. He took a long pull from his whiskey bottle, then sat by the fire, shotgun across his lap, watching her labored breathing and wondering what trouble the river had delivered to his door. Pain pulled Nayeli from darkness. Her leg burned like fire, her body ached, and unfamiliar smells surrounded her. Wood smoke, leather, coffee, and something sharper she couldn't name. Her eyes fluttered open to rough-hewn walls and a ceiling of wooden beams. Not her father's lodge, not any Apache dwelling. Memory rushed back, the flash flood, being swept away, the freezing water, then a white man's face. Fear surged through her. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the stabbing pain, searching for escape. The small cabin held a table, chairs, fireplace, and little else. Through the window, rain still fell in sheets. A floorboard creaked. The white man entered, tall and lean, with dark beard and eyes that reminded her of storm clouds. A soldier once, she guessed, from his bearing. He carried a steaming cup. Nayeli reached for her knife, finding only a splint on her leg. "Easy now," the man said, his voice low, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "You're safe." She understood some English from the missionary woman who had visited their camp, but trusted none of it. "Where?" she demanded. "My home." He pointed to himself. "Ethan." He approached slowly, offering the cup. The aroma of broth reached her, reminding Nayeli how long since she'd eaten. Still, she hesitated. Ethan sighed, took a sip himself, then offered it again, a gesture of trust. She accepted the cup, watching him warily as she drank. He moved to the fireplace, took a stick, and began drawing in the ash. A crude river, a figure in the water, another pulling it free. The rescue. "You." Nayeli touched her chest, then pointed to the rescuer in the drawing. "Save Nayeli." "Nayeli," he repeated, the syllables awkward on his tongue. She nodded, then pointed to him. "Ethan." A flicker of something, surprise, warmth, crossed his face before disappearing behind his guarded expression. Hoofbeats approached outside. Ethan's head snapped up, instantly alert. He pressed a finger to his lips, pointing to the floor. Understanding danger, Nayeli slid from the bed, allowing him to help her into a small cellar beneath loose floorboards. Cramped in darkness, she listened to boots overhead, voices discussing Apache troubles and Harrington's plans. One man mentioned searching for the chief's daughter, with a tone that made her blood cold. After they departed, Ethan helped her back to the bed, his touch impersonal yet careful. "Bad men," she said, pointing toward the door. Ethan nodded. "Yes." She studied him, noting the wedding ring hanging from a leather cord around his neck, the shadows beneath his eyes, the way he kept distance between them. A man carrying ghosts. "Nayeli, thanks," she said softly. He looked away, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Rest. Your leg needs healing." As he turned to leave, she caught his wrist. "Bad men come back." Their eyes met, a moment of perfect understanding transcending language. Whatever danger approached, it hunted them both now. 3 days passed. The rain stopped, leaving behind a muddy landscape where rivulets carved new paths across Ethan's land, much like the woman's arrival had carved new paths into his isolation. Ethan checked the splint on Nayeli's leg, impressed by her stoicism. Not once had she complained, though the pain must be considerable. "Good," he said, indicating the healing. "Better." She nodded, then pointed to a plant visible through the window. "Medicine, good for pain." Curious, Ethan retrieved it. Nayeli crushed the leaves, demonstrating how to make a poultice. He recognized the plant. He'd seen it 100 times without knowing its purpose. Their awkward communication was interrupted by the distant sound of approaching riders. Ethan's hand went instinctively to his holstered Colt. "Hide," he told Nayeli, but she was already moving toward the cellar. Dust clouds announced 3 riders, Marshal Baker flanked by 2 of Jefferson Harrington's men. Ethan stepped onto the porch, deliberately casual. "Marshal." "Didn't expect company." Baker dismounted, eyes scanning the property. "Blackwood. Thought I'd check on you after that storm. These boys were heading this way anyhow." One of Harrington's men, Rollins, a snake with human features, smirked. "Mr. Harrington's concerned about Apache activity." Raiding party hit the Wallace place. 2 dead. Ethan kept his face neutral. "Sorry to hear it. Haven't seen any trouble." "Mind if we look around?" Baker asked, already moving toward the cabin. "Something specific you're looking for?" Baker paused. "Harrington's offering a reward for information about Chief Nantan's daughter. Went missing during the storm. Tall for an Apache woman. Can't miss her." Inside, Baker's boots left mud on Ethan's clean floor. The marshal circled the small space, eyes lingering on the bed, recently slept in, and the extra cup on the table. "Expecting company, Blackwood?" "Just me." Baker crouched suddenly, examining the floor. His finger traced a small footprint in the mud his own boots had tracked in, smaller than a man's, partially erased, but still visible. "That right?" Baker stood, hand resting on his pistol. "Because I'm wondering why a man living alone would have woman's tracks in his cabin." Ethan shrugged. "Had a Yavapai woman do some washing last month, paid her in coffee." Baker studied him, unconvinced. "Harrington's mighty interested in finding this Apache girl. Says she knows something valuable. Man who finds her stands to profit. I'll keep an eye out." After they left, Ethan helped Nayeli from the cellar, his jaw tight with anger. "They lie," she said immediately. "No raid." "I know." Ethan checked the distance, making sure the riders were truly gone. "Harrington wants your land. He's creating reasons to move against your people." Through the window, Ethan spotted movement on the distant ridge, a glint of metal catching sunlight, a spyglass. "We're being watched," he said. Nayeli's dark eyes met his. "You help me. Now they hunt you too." The simple truth hung between them. Whatever came next, their fates were now entwined. Nayeli sat by the fire, watching shadows dance across Ethan Blackwood's face. 3 days she had been in this white man's cabin, and still he remained a mystery. He moved with the wariness of a coyote that had survived many snares, yet his hands were gentle when tending her leg. The fire crackled, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, darkness had fallen, but Nayeli felt eyes watching the cabin. The hunters were patient. "Your people," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "They search for you?" Nayeli nodded. "My father," she struggled with the English words, "important man, medicine man, chief." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. "Your chief Nantan's daughter." She touched her chest. "Yes, Nantan's daughter." Reaching for a stick, Nayeli drew in the ash beside Ethan's earlier drawings. Mountains, a river, circles representing lodges, then a man with a hat, more men with guns, and jagged lines she tapped forcefully. "Harrington," she said, "want this." She drew squares in the mountains, white metal. "Silver," Ethan supplied. "There's silver in your mountains." "Yes, silver." The word felt strange on her tongue. "My father say, spirits put silver there, not for taking." Ethan's expression hardened. "But Harrington wants it anyway." Nayeli nodded. "Make trouble, say Apache steal, kill, lie." "So he can bring in the army," Ethan concluded. "Drive your people out." "I go to meet—" She hesitated, searching for words. "Man, from other band, to make strong against Harrington." She gestured to her injured leg. "Then water take me." Ethan was silent, absorbing her story. Finally, he spoke. "A marriage arrangement." Nayeli nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Father say, make peace between bands, make strong against white men." Moonlight filtering through the window caught the metal of Ethan's ring, hanging from the cord around his neck. Nayeli pointed to it. "Your woman?" Pain flashed across his face, quickly masked. "My wife, Hannah." His voice was rough. "And our son." "Both gone." "How?" "Sickness. During the war." His hand closed around the ring. "I was away fighting. By the time I got the letter—" He shook his head. 3 years too late. Nayeli recognized the guilt weighing him down, familiar as her own. "You think your fault. I should have been there." "To die also?" she asked softly. Their eyes met across the fire, an understanding passing between them. Both carried burdens. Both stood between worlds. Nayeli pointed to the mountains visible through the window. My people there, looking. In the distance, pinpoints of light flickered, signal fires. They think white man take me. Maybe make war. Ethan's expression grew serious. We need to get you back to them, before Harrington's lies take root. Your people hate you for helping Apache, she warned. They're not my people. Ethan's tone was final. Haven't been for a long time. Nayeli studied this puzzling man, this enemy who had saved her, this loner who now risked everything to protect her. She reached across the space between them, her fingers brushing his hand. Goshkan, she said, offering the Apache word, one who walks between worlds. For the first time, Ethan didn't pull away from her touch. Morning sunlight streamed through the cabin windows as Ethan checked their supplies. 2 days since they'd decided to return Nayeli to her people, and preparations were nearly complete. Her leg had improved enough for travel, though riding would be painful. Harrington's men still watching? Nayeli asked, joining him at the window. Her English improved daily, picking up his speech patterns. 2 on the ridge, probably more we can't see. Ethan handed her a revolver. You remember how to use this? Nayeli checked the cylinder, her movements becoming more practiced. Yesterday he'd taught her to shoot, surprised by her natural aim. 6 shots, cock hammer first. Don't pull hard on trigger. Ethan nodded. Good. Hopefully you won't need it. They had mapped their route using sticks on the cabin floor, avoiding the main trails, taking a harder path through the hills where Harrington's men wouldn't expect them. We leave tomorrow before dawn, Ethan said. If we're lucky, we'll reach your people by nightfall. Nayeli studied him. When we reach my village, my father will be grateful, but others, she frowned, searching for words, not trust white man. I'm just delivering you home, Ethan replied. Then I'll go my own way. Something flickered in Nayeli's eyes. Back to being alone? The question struck closer than he expected. 3 years he'd embraced solitude, keeping the world at arm's length. Now this woman had breached his defenses, making him question the walls he'd built. It's safer, he said finally. Nayeli shook her head. And not safer, just empty. She moved to the fireplace, stirring something in a small clay bowl she'd fashioned, a mixture of herbs she'd found around his property. The familiar scent of her medicines had become oddly comforting. Night fell as they completed preparations. Outside, coyotes called to each other across the valley. Ethan stepped onto the porch, scanning the darkness for watchers. Nayeli joined him, her presence a warmth at his side. Above them, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. My people say stars are ancestors, she said softly, watching over us. Ethan glanced at her. Moonlight silvered her features, catching in her dark eyes. What do they say about different peoples coming together? Some say it weakens the blood. Others, she met his gaze. Others say new strength comes from new rivers joining. Without thinking, Ethan reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Her skin was warm beneath his fingertips. Your river saved me, she whispered. He hadn't been this close to anyone since Hannah. The realization should have sent him retreating. Instead, he found himself leaning closer. Their lips met hesitantly. Then, with growing certainty, something long dormant awakened in Ethan's chest, a warmth he'd thought forever extinguished. When they parted, Nayeli placed her hand over his heart. Not so empty now? Before he could answer, Sergeant whinnied sharply from the corral, his warning signal. Ethan tensed, listening. In the distance, the soft rhythm of approaching hoofbeats disturbed the night. They're coming, he said, drawing Nayeli back into the shadows. Change of plans. We leave now. Dawn broke as Ethan and Nayeli crested the ridge overlooking Devil's Canyon. They'd ridden through the night, Nayeli sharing Ethan's saddle while he led the pack horse carrying supplies. Behind them, Harrington's men had lost their trail in the darkness, but Ethan knew their reprieve was temporary. "How's the leg?" he asked, feeling Nayeli's weight shift against his back. "It speaks to me," she replied, using an Apache expression for pain. "But I listen only a little." Her stoicism impressed him. Most men would be complaining with such an injury, yet she endured without self-pity. They descended into the canyon, following a game trail too narrow for side-by-side riders. Here, the terrain worked in their favor, difficult to traverse but offering countless places to disappear if pursued. By midday, they reached a clearing where a burned homestead stood, charred timbers reaching skyward like accusing fingers. "The lawless place," Ethan muttered, dismounting to investigate. Nayeli slid carefully from the saddle, using a walking stick she'd carved. "The family Harrington said Apache killed?" Ethan examined the ground, reading signs others would miss. "No bodies," he noted. "And look," he pointed to distinctive boot prints. "These aren't moccasins. White men did this." "Harrington's men," Nayeli concluded. "But look what they left behind." Ethan pulled an arrow from the doorframe, fletched in Apache style but crudely made. "For the army to find." Rage darkened Nayeli's expression. "More lies." "We need to keep moving," Ethan said, helping her back onto Sergeant. "If we reach the north crossing by sunset, we can—" The crack of a rifle split the air. Splinters flew from a post inches from Ethan's head. There, Nayeli pointed toward the ridge. Riders appeared against the sky. 5 of them, led by Rollins. They'd been flanked. "Run!" Ethan swung into the saddle behind Nayeli, spurring Sergeant toward the tree line as bullets kicked up dust around them. They crashed through underbrush, branches whipping past. Behind them, pursuit closed in. The path narrowed, then opened to reveal the river, swollen but passable where it widened around a gravel bar. "Hold tight," Ethan commanded, urging Sergeant into the current. The water surged around them, cold and powerful. Midway across, more riders appeared on the far bank, Harrington himself with Marshal Baker and 3 others. "Nowhere to run, Blackwood," Harrington called, leveling a rifle. Ethan turned Sergeant parallel to the current, using the horse's body to shield Nayeli. "We need to split up. Follow the river north. I'll draw them off." "No." Nayeli's grip tightened on his arm. "Together." A bullet struck the water beside them. Sergeant reared, nearly unseating them both. Making his decision, Ethan aimed for the narrowest point between the 2 groups, spurring Sergeant up the bank directly toward Harrington's position. The unexpected charge created momentary confusion. Ethan fired his revolver, forcing Harrington's men to scatter. They broke through, Sergeant's powerful stride carrying them into the forest beyond. A shout, then searing pain across Ethan's back, a bullet's graze. Nayeli turned, returning fire with the revolver he'd given her. A cry told him she'd found her mark. "My village lies beyond those hills," she said, pointing north. "We can make it by nightfall." Behind them, pursuit regrouped. Ahead lay uncertain welcome among her people. Ethan urged Sergeant onward, feeling Nayeli's strength against him, their shared breath, their shared fate. The crossing point was behind them now, no turning back. Twilight purpled the sky as Ethan and Nayeli reached the overlook above her village. Below, lodges stood in orderly formation beside a small tributary of the Gila. Cookfires dotted the gathering darkness, and the sounds of daily life, children's voices, dogs barking, floated upward on the evening breeze. "Home," Nayeli murmured, relief in her voice. Ethan scanned the perimeter with experienced eyes. No sentries. They're not expecting trouble. They soon will have it. Nayeli replied grimly. Harrington will not stop. Sergeant's ears pricked backward. Both turned to see dust clouds in the distance, riders approaching from the south. Harrington, Ethan confirmed. With reinforcements. Nayeli straightened. We must warn my father. They descended toward the village, Ethan acutely aware of his vulnerability. An armed white man approaching an Apache camp could expect swift death, especially with tensions already high. Movement flickered at the village edge. Warriors materialized from shadows, weapons raised. Nayeli called out in Apache, her voice carrying authority despite her injury. The warriors hesitated, then one broke away, running toward the central lodge. They recognize me, she explained to Ethan, but they do not trust you. Can't blame them, Ethan muttered, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Warriors surrounded them, faces impassive. Ethan remained still, meeting their eyes without challenge or submission. One wrong move would mean death. The crowd parted. An older man emerged, tall and dignified, with streaks of gray in his long hair. Chief Nantan. His stoic expression cracked at the sight of his daughter. Rapid Apache passed between father and daughter. Too quick for Ethan to catch meanings, but the tension in the air shifted. Nantan approached, studying Ethan with penetrating eyes. My daughter says you saved her from the river, he said, in accented but clear English. That you protected her from the man who covets our lands. Ethan nodded once. Harrington's coming, with armed men. Nantan's expression hardened. How many? At least 15, maybe more. A commotion at the village perimeter. A scout arrived, speaking urgently. Nantan listened, then turned to his warriors, issuing commands. The camp erupted into organized activity. They've been spotted, Nayeli translated. Coming fast. Nantan faced Ethan again. Why does a white man risk his life for an Apache? Before Ethan could answer, rifle fire cracked in the distance. Harrington had arrived. Because it was right, Ethan said simply, drawing his revolver. And I'm tired of men like Harrington taking what isn't theirs. Understanding passed between the men. Nantan nodded once, then spoke to his warriors. One handed Ethan a rifle. Today, you fight with us, Nantan declared. The battle was brief but fierce. Harrington's men, expecting to surprise a peaceful camp, instead met organized resistance. Apache warriors used terrain to their advantage, while Ethan's military experience provided tactical support. When Harrington himself charged toward Nantan, Ethan intercepted him. Their struggle was personal now, two men from different worlds, fighting for what they believed. Harrington fell, not by Ethan's hand, but by Nayeli's arrow, as she protected both her father and the man she'd come to love. As dawn broke, silence settled over the battlefield. Harrington's surviving men had fled, their leader dead. Marshal Baker, captured alive, confessed to the corruption under questioning. Nantan approached Ethan, who stood apart, uncertain of his place now that the fight was over. You stood between my daughter and death, the chief said, between my people and destruction. He extended his hand in the white man's gesture. There is a place for one who can stand between worlds. Ethan looked to Nayeli, who watched him with hope in her eyes. I've been alone a long time, Ethan said. Standing between worlds means belonging to neither. Or to both, Nayeli replied, stepping forward to take his hand. The ring, that had hung around his neck for so long, felt suddenly lighter. Not forgotten, never that, but no longer a chain binding him to grief. Two rivers can join, Nantan said, and become stronger together. Ethan looked out over the valley, where the waters flowed toward a shared horizon. For the first time in years, he saw not just the past, but a future. I'd like to learn, he said finally, how to belong to both. Epilogue. Rivers Crossing. 1 year later. The trading post at the river's bend bustled with activity. Apache families and settlers alike came to exchange goods and information, a neutral ground between two worlds often at odds. Ethan secured the last crate of supplies delivered from town, nodding to the cavalry lieutenant who'd escorted the wagon. "Quiet month," the officer commented. "No raids, no trouble." "Peace is good for business," Ethan replied. "For everyone." Inside the sturdy log structure, Nayeli tended to a settler's child with a persistent cough. Her reputation as a healer had spread beyond tribal boundaries, drawing people who once would have shunned Apache medicine. The lieutenant departed, and Ethan watched the dust trail fade. Early rumors of silver on Apache land had proven true, but instead of conflict, a carefully negotiated agreement had emerged. Chief Nantan had proven as shrewd in diplomacy as in war. "You're thinking too much," Nayeli said, joining him on the porch, her English now nearly flawless. "I see it in your face." Ethan smiled, remembering where we started. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. The silver band on her finger caught the sunlight, made from Hannah's ring, reforged into something new. Around his neck hung Nayeli's medicine pouch, a different kind of protection. "Come," she said. "Father is waiting." They walked together to the river where it all began. Chief Nantan stood at the water's edge, watching children from both communities playing together on the banks, among them orphans from both worlds who had found home at the trading post. "The army has signed the treaty," Nantan announced as they approached. "Our boundaries will be respected." "Harrington's replacement seems more reasonable," Ethan noted. "Men like Harrington will always exist," Nantan replied, "but so will men who stand against them." Nayeli placed her hand on her stomach, still flat, but harboring a secret only recently shared with Ethan. "New life, born of two worlds." "The child will have a strong name," Nantan said, eyes twinkling with knowledge. "River's child." Ethan looked out over the water that had nearly claimed Nayeli, that had instead delivered her to him. The current still flowed, strong and dangerous, but they had built a bridge across it, tentative at first, now growing stronger. "Not one world or the other," Nayeli said softly. But something new between them. As sunset painted the water's gold, Ethan felt the weight of his past finally settle into its proper place, not forgotten, but no longer a barrier to what lay ahead. The river that had once divided their worlds now brought them together, its crossing a journey neither had expected but both had needed. "Something new," he agreed, his arm circling her waist as they faced the horizon together.